In the heart of Montana's sprawling countryside, nestled between rolling hills and endless fields of golden grass, stood Cedar Ridge Ranch. It was a place where time seemed to move slower, far away from the noise and chaos of city life. Kakyakuse. Thompson, a rugged man in his late 40s with sun-kissed skin and calloused hands, had spent most of his life tending to this land. The ranch wasn't just his livelihood, it was his home, his legacy, and a testament to generations of hard work. His grandfather had first settled here decades ago, carving out a modest farm from wild prairie. Over the years, it grew into a thriving operation, raising cattle, growing crops, and sustaining the family through thick and thin. Jack lived for the quiet rhythm of ranch life. Every morning began the same way. He'd rise before dawn, brew a strong cup of coffee, and step onto the porch to watch the sunrise paint the horizon in hues of orange and pink. The air smelled of fresh earth and hay, mixed with the faint scent of livestock. His dog, Rusty, a loyal golden retriever with a wagging tail that never seemed to stop, would bark excitedly as if urging him to start the day. Together, they'd head out to check on the cattle, mend fences, or inspect the fields. It was simple, predictable, and deeply satisfying. For years, the dirt road cutting across the ranch had been little more than a convenience for neighbors. It connected two distant parts of the county, offering a shortcut through Jack's property. People passing by would often wave or honk their horns in greeting. Some even stopped to chat, sharing stories about town gossip or asking how the harvest was going. Jack didn't mind. In fact, he welcomed the occasional company. Living alone on such vast acreage could get lonely, and these small interactions reminded him that he was part of a larger community. He trusted his neighbors to respect his land, and they always did, until everything changed. The trouble began when developers arrived in town. Big trucks rumbled down the highway carrying equipment and materials for new housing projects. Billboards sprouted along the roadsides, advertising luxury homes with breathtaking views of the mountains. At first, Jack paid little attention. After all, progress was inevitable, and he figured the developments would stay confined to areas closer to town. But then came the bulldozers. They carved wide paths through untouched wilderness, leveling trees and flattening hills to make room for sprawling estates. Soon, the once quiet countryside buzzed with activity. Construction workers swarmed the area during the day, while at night, the glow of newly installed streetlights illuminated what used to be pitch-black skies. As the neighborhood transformed, so did the traffic patterns. What had once been a trickle of friendly locals driving past Jack's ranch turned into a steady stream of unfamiliar vehicles. At first, it was just a few extra cars, a delivery truck here, a moving van there. But soon, heavy machinery joined the parade. Dump trucks hauling gravel thundered down the dirt road, shaking the ground beneath them. Cement mixers followed close behind, their massive wheels churning up dust clouds that lingered long after they passed. Each vehicle left its mark on the fragile landscape. Deep ruts formed in the soft soil, making it harder for Jack to navigate his tractor. Fence posts loosened under the constant vibrations, allowing cows to wander dangerously close to the road. Worst of all, the noise frightened his animals. Calves bawled anxiously and horses kicked at their stalls, spooked by the rumble of engines. Jack tried to ignore it at first, telling himself it was temporary. Surely the construction phase wouldn't last forever. But weeks turned into months, and the disruptions only worsened. One afternoon, he returned from checking the north pasture to find fresh tire tracks zigzagging across his carefully planted alfalfa field. The sight made his blood boil. That crop had taken months to grow, and now it lay trampled underfoot, or rather, under tire. He clenched his fists, trying to calm himself, but frustration bubbled over. How dare someone treat his land like this? This wasn't just any piece of property. It was his home, his inheritance, his responsibility. Determined to put an end to the chaos, Jack drove into town to speak with local authorities. He explained the situation calmly, showing photos of the damaged fences and ruined crops. The sheriff listened politely but shrugged helplessly. "We can't do much unless we know who's responsible," he said. When Jack pressed further, pointing out that the road ran directly through his ranch, the response was equally disheartening. Technically, that road isn't registered as private property, the sheriff admitted. It's kind of in limbo. Those words hit Jack like a punch to the gut. Limbo? How could something so clearly tied to his land be considered undefined? Frustrated but unwilling to give up, Jack reached out to other officials. He attended town hall meetings, wrote letters, and even hired a surveyor to confirm the boundaries of his property. Yet no matter how hard he fought, nothing changed. The intrusions continued unabated. Every time he thought things couldn't get worse, they somehow did. One evening, as he sat on his porch nursing a glass of whiskey, he heard a loud crash from the direction of the barn. Rushing over, he discovered one of his prized bulls lying injured near the fence line. Its leg was twisted at an unnatural angle, likely caused by panicking after being startled by speeding headlights. Seeing the animal in pain broke Jack's heart. Enough was enough. Something had to be done. That night, unable to sleep, Jack stared at the ceiling, replaying the events of the past year in his mind. He felt powerless, trapped between bureaucracy and greed. But then, an idea flickered in the back of his mind. An unconventional solution born out of desperation. If people wanted to use his land, why shouldn't they pay for it? The thought grew stronger as he mulled it over. Why should strangers reap the benefits of his property without contributing anything in return? With renewed determination, Jack decided to take matters into his own hands. Little did he know, this decision would spark a chain reaction that would change not only his life but also the entire community. The next morning, Jack woke up with a clear plan in mind. He wasn't going to sit back and let others take advantage of his land anymore. If people wanted to use the dirt road that cut through Cedar Ridge Ranch, they would have to pay for it. It was a bold idea, perhaps even risky, but Jack felt it was the only way to regain control of his property. After all, if the authorities couldn't help him, he had no choice but to take matters into his own hands. He started by heading into town to purchase supplies. At the hardware store, he picked out heavy-duty steel posts, thick chains, and a sturdy padlock. The shopkeeper raised an eyebrow when Jack explained what he needed them for, but Jack just smiled and said, "You'll see soon enough." Back at the ranch, he got to work immediately, with Rusty trotting alongside him, wagging his tail as if sensing something big was about to happen. Jack drove stakes into the ground on either side of the dirt road where it entered his property. He attached a chain between the posts, creating a solid barrier that no vehicle could pass without permission. Then came the finishing touch, a large wooden sign painted in bold black letters, $100 entry fee, trespassers will be prosecuted. When the gate was finally in place, Jack stepped back to admire his handiwork. For the first time in months, he felt a glimmer of hope. This wasn't just a physical barrier, it was a statement, a message to everyone who thought they could use his land without consequences. As he stood there staring at the locked gate, he wondered how long it would take before someone noticed. The answer came sooner than he expected. By mid-morning, the first car pulled up to the gate. It was Mrs. Henderson, a retired schoolteacher who lived a few miles down the road. She leaned out of her window, squinting at the sign. "What's this all about, Jack?" she called out, her voice tinged with disbelief. "This is my land," Jack replied firmly, walking over to meet her. "If you want to drive through here, you'll need to pay the fee." Mrs. Henderson looked shocked. "But I've been using this road for years. You can't just charge me now." "I didn't ask for your business before," Jack said evenly. "But things are different now. Either pay the fee or find another route." She huffed, muttered something under her breath, and eventually turned her car around. Jack watched her go, feeling a mix of satisfaction and unease. He knew this wouldn't be the last confrontation. He was prepared for pushback, but standing his ground still felt uncomfortable. Still, he reminded himself why he was doing this. His animals were suffering, his crops were being destroyed, and his peace of mind had been shattered. Something had to change. Word spread quickly about Jack's new policy. By noon, more cars began arriving. each driver reacting differently to the sight of the locked gate. Some argued, insisting they had every right to use the road. Others tried to plead their case, claiming they were neighbors or friends. A few simply refused to believe Jack was serious. One man even laughed when he read the sign, saying, "Come on, Jack, you don't really mean this, do you?" But Jack held firm. He politely but firmly repeated the same message: pay the fee or leave. Most drivers eventually gave up and turned back, grumbling angrily as they went. However, one couple surprised him by pulling out their wallets and handing over $200 in cash for both directions. They were tourists, it turned out, eager to experience the novelty of driving through a working ranch. Jack couldn't help but chuckle as he opened the gate for them. Maybe this idea would work after all. As the day wore on, the reactions grew louder and more intense. Neighbors gathered near the gate, discussing the situation in hushed tones. Some expressed sympathy for Jack, acknowledging that he had every right to protect his property. Others accused him of greed, claiming he was exploiting the situation for personal gain. The tension escalated when a group of wealthy homeowners from the newly developed subdivision showed up. They arrived in shiny SUVs, dressed in expensive clothes, and demanded answers. One man stepped forward, pointing a finger at Jack. "You're holding us hostage," he shouted. "We need this road to get to our homes." Jack crossed his arms and met the man's gaze steadily. "This has always been private property," he said. "You never asked permission before, so why should I let you use it now? If you want access, you'll have to pay." The man sputtered in outrage, but Jack didn't budge. Eventually, the group dispersed, muttering threats about legal action. Jack knew this was coming, it was inevitable, but he also knew he had done nothing wrong. The road belonged to him, and he had every right to charge for its use. Still, the confrontation left him drained. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the ranch, Jack sat on his porch, replaying the day's events in his mind. Rusty rested at his feet, sensing his owner's exhaustion. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, but for now, Jack allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. News of Jack's $100 gate made headlines in the local paper the very next day. Reporters descended upon Cedar Ridge Ranch, eager to capture the story of the man who dared to stand up against his neighbors. Some portrayed him as a villain, a stubborn recluse trying to profit off public land. Others painted him as a hero, a symbol of resistance against unchecked development and corporate greed. Protesters gathered outside the ranch, holding signs that read, "Public access now" and "Stop greedy landowners." Their chants echoed across the fields, disrupting the once peaceful atmosphere. Jack ignored them, focusing instead on keeping his animals safe and tending to his daily chores. He knew the attention wouldn't last forever. People would move on to the next big story. But for now, he had to endure the chaos. Despite the backlash, not everyone opposed Jack's decision. Strangers began reaching out to show their support, sending letters and emails praising his courage. Some even offered financial assistance to cover potential legal fees. One elderly woman from a nearby town drove out to personally thank Jack, explaining how developers had similarly encroached on her family's land years ago. Her words touched him deeply, reminding him that he wasn't alone in this fight. Slowly but surely, Jack began to realize that his actions had sparked a larger conversation about property rights and community responsibility. Whether he liked it or not, he had become a figurehead in a debate that extended far beyond his little corner of Montana. As days turned into weeks, Jack found himself adapting to his new reality. Collecting fees from those willing to pay became part of his routine. He kept meticulous records, ensuring transparency in case anyone questioned his motives. Tourists continued to trickle in, curious about the infamous $100 gate, and some local businesses even benefited from the influx of visitors. While tensions remained high, Jack couldn't deny that his bold move had shifted the balance of power. For the first time in months, he felt like he was in control of his own destiny. And, though the battle was far from over, he knew he had taken the first crucial step toward reclaiming his land and his life. The controversy surrounding Jack's $100 gate continued to grow, dividing the community like never before. What had started as a personal act of defiance quickly spiraled into a heated public debate that dominated conversations at coffee shops, town hall meetings, and even church gatherings. The once quiet countryside buzzed with opinions, accusations, and emotions running high. Some people saw Jack as a hero, a man standing up for his rights against greedy developers and complacent authorities. Others viewed him as an obstacle, someone selfishly prioritizing profit over practicality. As the days passed, the tension escalated, drawing in not just neighbors but also outsiders eager to weigh in on the drama unfolding at Cedar Ridge Ranch. Jack found himself at the center of it all, whether he wanted to be or not. Every morning he'd wake up to see fresh tire tracks near the gate where drivers had tried, and failed, to bypass his barrier. Occasionally he'd find notes tucked under rocks or stuck to the fence posts, some scolding him for being unreasonable, others applauding his boldness. One anonymous letter read, "You're making a fool of yourself, Jack. No one cares about your stupid ranch." Another simply said, "Thank you for fighting back. We need more people like you." These conflicting messages only added to the weight on his shoulders. He knew he couldn't please everyone, but the constant scrutiny was exhausting. The situation reached a boiling point when a group of wealthy homeowners from the nearby subdivision filed formal complaints with the county. They argued that Jack's actions amounted to extortion and demanded immediate intervention to force him to remove the gate. Their lawyer sent a strongly worded letter accusing Jack of violating public access laws, despite the fact that the road had never officially been declared public property. Jack read the letter carefully, feeling a mix of anger and frustration. He hadn't broken any laws, he was simply enforcing his rights, but the legal jargon made him feel like he was already losing ground. Determined not to back down, he called his old friend Tom, a retired attorney who lived 2 counties over. "I need advice," Jack admitted over the phone. "These people mean business." Tom arrived the next day, bringing with him stacks of documents and decades of legal expertise. Together, they pored over maps, deeds, and historical records related to the dirt road. Tom explained that the key to winning this battle lay in proving ownership. If Jack could demonstrate that the road had always been part of Cedar Ridge Ranch, and not public land, the county would have no choice but to side with him. Armed with this knowledge, Jack hired a professional surveyor to map out the boundaries of his property. The process took weeks, but the results were worth it. The survey confirmed what Jack had known all along. The dirt road was entirely within the confines of his ranch. It had never been legally designated as public property. It was his land, plain and simple. With evidence in hand, Jack decided to take the fight to the next level. Instead of waiting for the county to respond to the homeowner's complaints, he filed a countersuit. His claim was straightforward yet powerful. The road belonged to him, and anyone who used it without permission owed him compensation for years of unauthorized access. This bold move shocked the community and caught national attention. The local news outlets picked up the story, framing Jack as either a stubborn troublemaker or a courageous defender of private property rights. National media soon followed, sending reporters and camera crews to interview him. Overnight, Jack became a polarizing figure. His name splashed across headlines nationwide. The spotlight brought both benefits and challenges. On one hand, Jack received an outpouring of support from strangers who admired his determination. Donations poured in to help cover his mounting legal fees, and letters of encouragement arrived daily. One woman wrote, "You're giving hope to small landowners. Everywhere, keep fighting." Another donor included a check with a note that read, "For Rusty's Biscuits, because every hero needs a good dog by their side." These gestures warmed Jack's heart, reminding him that he wasn't alone in this fight. But the attention also attracted criticism from those who opposed his methods. Protesters gathered outside the ranch almost daily, holding signs and chanting slogans. Some even vandalized the gate, cutting the chains late at night in an attempt to reopen the road. Each time this happened, Jack repaired the damage and doubled down on security measures, installing cameras and motion sensors to catch trespassers in the act. Despite the chaos, Jack refused to let negativity consume him. He focused on what mattered most: protecting his land and setting a precedent for other property owners facing similar struggles. To keep morale high, he leaned on his routine, finding comfort in the familiar rhythms of ranch life. Mornings, still, began with coffee on the porch. Afternoons were spent tending to cattle and fixing fences, and evenings ended with Rusty curled up at his feet. Even amidst the turmoil, these small moments grounded him, reminding him why he was fighting so hard. His animals depended on him. His crops needed care, and his home deserved respect. No amount of protest or legal drama could change that. As the legal battle dragged on, Jack's resolve only grew stronger. He attended court hearings dressed in his best jeans and boots, sitting stoically as lawyers argued over technicalities. During breaks, he'd chat with supporters who came to show solidarity, sharing stories about ranch life and answering questions from curious onlookers. At times, he felt overwhelmed by the complexity of the case, but Tom assured him they were on solid footing. "You've got justice on your side," Tom told him during one particularly grueling session. "Stick to the facts and we'll win." Meanwhile, the community remained divided. Some neighbors softened their stance, recognizing the fairness of Jack's argument. A few even apologized for doubting him, admitting they hadn't fully understood the extent of the damage caused by unchecked traffic. Others, however, dug in their heels, refusing to acknowledge his right to charge for access. Tensions flared at town meetings, where tempers often boiled over into shouting matches. One heated exchange ended with a local farmer storming out, slamming the door behind him. Yet through it all, Jack stayed calm. He listened patiently to opposing views, responding with logic rather than emotion. His quiet confidence earned him grudging respect from even his harshest critics. Slowly but surely, public opinion began to shift. More people started questioning the ethics of using private land without permission, especially when it resulted in harm to livestock and crops. Articles highlighting Jack's plight appeared in agricultural magazines, sparking discussions among farmers and ranchers across the country. Many identified with his struggle, sharing their own experiences of battling encroachment and bureaucracy. Social media played a role too, with hashtags like #StandWithJack trending locally. Supporters organized fundraisers to help cover his expenses, while detractors launched counter-campaigns accusing him of greed. The online debate mirrored the real-world conflict, amplifying voices on both sides. Through it all, Jack remained steadfast. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he also knew he was doing the right thing. By standing up for his property, he was sending a message, not just to his neighbors but to anyone who believed in the importance of respecting boundaries. Whether people loved him or hated him, they couldn't deny that he had sparked a conversation worth having. And as the days turned into weeks, Jack held on to hope that justice would prevail, not just for him, but for everyone who valued the sanctity of private land. The courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Jack sat at a wooden table, his hands clasped tightly together, as lawyers argued passionately before the judge. The trial had become the talk of the town, drawing spectators from miles around. Some came to support Jack, while others hoped to see him fail. Reporters filled the back rows, scribbling notes and snapping photos. For Jack, the stakes couldn't have been higher. This wasn't just about money or property. It was about principle. He was fighting for the right to protect what was rightfully his, and he knew that losing this case could set a dangerous precedent for landowners everywhere. Tom, Jack's lawyer, stood confidently in front of the judge, presenting evidence piece by piece. The survey maps were clear. The dirt road ran entirely through Cedar Ridge Ranch. Historical documents showed that no formal agreement had ever transferred ownership of the road to the county or designated it as public property. Tom emphasized that Jack's actions weren't motivated by greed, but by necessity. "My client has endured years of damage to his land, his animals, and his livelihood," Tom said, his voice steady and firm. "He is simply asking for justice, for the law to recognize his rights as a property owner." On the other side, the homeowner's attorney fired back with arguments designed to tug at emotions. "This isn't just about one man's ranch," she declared dramatically. "It's about access. People rely on this road to get to their homes, schools, and workplaces. Blocking it harms the entire community. She accused Jack of exploiting a loophole to extort money from innocent citizens, painting him as an obstacle to progress. Her words stirred murmurs among the crowd, and Jack felt a pang of unease. He hated being portrayed as the villain, but he reminded himself of the truth. He hadn't caused this problem. He was merely trying to solve it. As the days passed, the courtroom drama unfolded like a chess match, each side making calculated moves. Witnesses testified, experts presented conflicting opinions, and legal jargon flew back and forth. At times, Jack found himself zoning out, overwhelmed by the complexity of it all. But then Rusty would nudge him gently under the table, bringing him back to reality. Jack smiled faintly, grateful for his loyal companion's presence. Even in the midst of chaos, Rusty remained a constant source of comfort. Finally, after weeks of testimony, the judge announced that it was time for closing arguments. Tom rose to speak, his tone measured but powerful. "Your Honor," he began, "this case boils down to one simple question. Does a private landowner have the right to control access to his property? The evidence shows that Mr. Thompson acted within his rights when he installed the gate. Not only did he suffer significant losses due to unauthorized use of his land, but he also sought to prevent further harm. His decision to charge a fee was not arbitrary. It was a reasonable response to years of neglect by those who refused to acknowledge his rights." The opposing counsel countered with her own impassioned plea, urging the court to rule in favor of the homeowners. "If we allow individuals to block roads arbitrarily, where does it end?" she asked rhetorically. "Will every shortcut through a farm come with a price tag? Will rural communities be held hostage by landowners demanding payment?" When both sides finished, the judge adjourned the proceedings to deliberate. For Jack, the waiting period was agonizing. He returned to the ranch trying to focus on daily tasks, but his mind kept drifting back to the courtroom. What if the judge ruled against him? Would he lose everything he'd worked so hard to protect? Nights were especially difficult. Sleep eluded him as he replayed the trial in his head, analyzing every argument, every glance from the jury. Rusty seemed to sense his anxiety, staying close by his side more than usual. On particularly restless nights, Jack would take long walks across the ranch, letting the cool breeze calm his racing thoughts. Then, one crisp morning, the call came. The judge had reached a verdict. Jack's heart pounded as he drove back to the courthouse, his stomach churning with nerves. When he arrived, the room was packed, buzzing with whispered speculation. As the judge entered and took his seat, silence fell over the crowd. Everyone leaned forward, hanging on his every word. After careful consideration of the evidence, the judge began, pausing to adjust his glasses. "It is clear that the dirt road in question lies entirely within the boundaries of Mr. Thompson's property. There is no legal basis to classify it as public land. Furthermore, Mr. Thompson has demonstrated substantial harm caused by unauthorized use of this road. Therefore, I rule in favor of the defendant." A wave of relief washed over Jack as cheers erupted from his supporters. Tears welled up in his eyes, not just from joy but from sheer exhaustion. After months of battling doubt, anger, and fear, he had finally won. The ruling wasn't just a personal victory, it was a triumph for property owners everywhere. The judge ordered the homeowners in the county to compensate Jack for damages incurred over the years, a settlement that would help repair his fences, replace ruined crops, and install better security measures around the ranch. News of the verdict spread quickly, sparking celebrations among Jack's allies and outrage among his opponents. Local newspapers hailed him as a champion of private property rights, while critics accused the court of setting a dangerous precedent. Letters poured in from across the country, many praising Jack's perseverance. One farmer wrote, "You've inspired us all to stand up for our land. Thank you for showing us it's possible to fight back." Another supporter sent a check, along with a note, for Rusty's biscuits and maybe a new tractor. But the victory didn't mean the conflict was over. While the ruling gave Jack the upper hand, Tensions in the community lingered. Some neighbors begrudgingly accepted the outcome, while others vowed to continue fighting. A few even attempted to appeal the decision, though their efforts ultimately went nowhere. Despite the lingering animosity, Jack chose to focus on moving forward. With the settlement money, he invested in improvements to the ranch. He repaired the damaged fences, upgraded irrigation systems, and built a stronger, more secure gate at the entrance of the road. He also hired additional workers to help maintain the property, ensuring it stayed in top condition. To address concerns about accessibility, Jack introduced a compromise: annual passes. Drivers could apply for permission to use the road, paying a reasonable fee based on frequency of use. The rates were fair enough to deter abuse, but affordable enough for locals who genuinely needed access. This solution struck a balance between protecting his land and accommodating legitimate needs. Most importantly, it allowed Jack to retain control while fostering goodwill among his neighbors. Life on Cedar Ridge Ranch gradually returned to normalcy, though quieter than before. Traffic dwindled significantly, thanks to the new regulations. Those who still used the road respected the rules, knowing that violations wouldn't be tolerated. Jack spent less time worrying about trespassers and more time enjoying the simple pleasures of ranch life. Mornings once again began with coffee on the porch. Afternoons were filled with chores, and evenings ended with Rusty curled up at his feet. The stress of the past year faded into memory, replaced by a renewed sense of peace and purpose. Looking back, Jack realized how much the ordeal had changed him. He had started as a quiet man content to live off the grid, minding his own business. But standing up for his rights had forced him to confront challenges he never imagined. Along the way, he learned valuable lessons about resilience, determination, and the power of community. Though the battle had been tough, it taught him something important. Sometimes doing the right thing means taking risks, even if it makes you unpopular. As he stood on the porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery hues, Jack felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had fought for his land and he had won. More than that, he had proven that one person can make a difference if they're willing to stand their ground. The road ahead might still hold challenges, but for now Jack was content to savor the quiet beauty of Cedar Ridge Ranch, knowing he had done everything in his power to protect it. The victory in court marked the beginning of a new chapter for Jack and Cedar Ridge Ranch. While the legal battle had been exhausting, it also brought unexpected opportunities for growth and reflection. The settlement money wasn't just a financial boost. It was a chance to rebuild not only his property, but also his relationship with the community. Jack knew that winning the lawsuit didn't mean everyone would suddenly agree with him or forgive him for blocking the road. But he also understood that healing takes time, and small gestures could go a long way toward bridging divides. With the funds from the settlement, Jack set out to make significant improvements to the ranch. First, he replaced the old wooden fences that had been damaged by reckless drivers and wandering cattle. The new ones were sturdier, built to last for years without needing constant repairs. He installed solar-powered lights along the perimeter, casting a soft glow over the fields at night and deterring trespassers. Next, he upgraded the irrigation system, ensuring his crops would thrive even during dry spells. These practical changes made life easier for Jack and gave him peace of mind, knowing his land was better protected than ever before. But Jack didn't stop there. He decided to invest in something more symbolic, a monument at the entrance of the dirt road. It wasn't flashy or extravagant, just a simple stone marker engraved with the words, "Private property, respect earns access." For Jack, it represented everything he had fought for: fairness, accountability, and mutual respect. When neighbors saw the marker, some rolled their eyes, while others nodded approvingly. Either way, it served as a reminder that the road, and the land surrounding it, belonged to someone who valued it deeply. To address ongoing concerns about accessibility, Jack introduced a streamlined application process for annual passes. Drivers could fill out a form online or visit the ranch in person to explain their reasons for needing access. Fees varied depending on usage, with discounts available for local farmers and emergency services. This approach struck a balance between protecting his property and accommodating those who genuinely needed the road. Most importantly, it gave Jack control over who entered his land and when. Each approved applicant received a laminated pass to display on their windshield, along with clear guidelines about speed limits, noise restrictions, and prohibited activities like littering or off-roading. At first, skepticism lingered among some neighbors. A few continued to grumble about having to pay anything at all, arguing that the road should remain free for everyone. But over time, many came to appreciate the benefits of the new system. Traffic slowed down significantly, reducing wear and tear on the dirt path. Fences stayed intact and livestock remained calm. Even the tourists who occasionally paid the fee behaved more responsibly, knowing they were guests on private property. Jack noticed subtle shifts in attitudes too. Some neighbors who had once criticized him now greeted him warmly when they passed through the gate. One woman even stopped to thank him for keeping the road well maintained, saying, "It's smoother than ever. I can actually get my kids to school on time now." Jack also took steps to mend fences beyond the literal ones. He hosted an open house at the ranch, inviting neighbors, local officials, and curious townsfolk to see firsthand how he operated. Visitors toured the fields, met the animals, and learned about the challenges of running a working ranch. Over plates of homemade chili and fresh-baked cornbread, Jack shared stories about his family's history on the land and explained why preserving it meant so much to him. Many attendees left with a newfound appreciation for his perspective, realizing that the conflict hadn't been about greed, but about survival. The event sparked conversations that extended far beyond the ranch. Local newspapers published articles, highlighting Jack's efforts to find common ground, portraying him less as a controversial figure and more as a thoughtful leader. Community leaders praised his willingness to compromise, noting that his annual pass program set a positive example for other landowners facing similar disputes. Social media buzzed with praise as people shared photos of Rusty lounging near the gate or calves grazing peacefully in the fields. Slowly but surely, Jack's reputation transformed from that guy with the $100 gate to the rancher who stood up for what's right. Despite these strides, Jack knew not everyone would come around. Some neighbors still harbored resentment, refusing to acknowledge his right to charge for access. Others avoided him altogether, choosing alternate routes rather than dealing with the gate. Jack accepted this reality with grace, understanding that change doesn't happen overnight. What mattered most was that he had taken meaningful action to protect his land, and that action had inspired others to do the same. Across the country, small landowners began reaching out to him for advice on handling encroachment issues. Jack responded to each message thoughtfully, offering guidance based on his own experiences. In doing so, he became a mentor and advocate for rural communities fighting to preserve their way of life. Life on Cedar Ridge Ranch settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable, yet fulfilling. Mornings still started with coffee on the porch. Afternoons were spent tending to chores, and evenings ended with Rusty curled up at his feet. But now, there was a sense of accomplishment underlying it all. Jack had proven that standing up for your rights doesn't have to mean alienating those around you. By balancing firmness with fairness, he had earned both respect and trust. One crisp autumn evening, as golden leaves swirled in the breeze, Jack reflected on how far he'd come. The journey hadn't been easy. He had faced anger, accusations, and sleepless nights, but it had been worth it. His fight hadn't just saved his ranch, it had strengthened his resolve and deepened his connection to the land. As he gazed out at the rolling hills bathed in twilight, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. The ranch wasn't just a place, it was a testament to resilience, hard work, and the enduring power of home. Rusty let out a soft bark, breaking Jack's reverie. He chuckled, scratching the dog behind the ears. "You've been with me through all of it, haven't you, boy?" Rusty wagged his tail in response, as if to say, "Every step of the way." Together, they walked back toward the house, silhouetted against the fading light. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, Jack allowed himself to savor the quiet beauty of the moment. After all, he had earned it. One tire track, one fence post, and one courageous decision at a time.